And then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Falling in love, the child enters the age of adolescence, the age of the emotions. Following infancy and childhood, adolescence is the third of the 7 ages, and including the college years, it stretches from around the years of 14 to 21. Of course, every age has its passions or emotions, but commonly we associate our discovery of the opposite sex with adolescence, and that experience notifies us most clearly our lives have changed. I suspect nearly everyone remembers falling in love. It is such a thrilling and wonderful and dreadfully awkward experience. In As You Like It, the young lovers all fall in love at first sight. In fact, love on the Shakespearean stage was that sort of thing. "Who ever loved that loved not at first sight?" asks Phoebe in As You Like It. Shakespeare's famous lovers, Orlando and Rosalind in As You Like It, Romeo and Juliet in their play, Ferdinand and Miranda in The Tempest, these lovers all change eyes and sigh. The young lovers in Shakespeare's plays remind us of the power of our emotions. Even if we haven't read much Shakespeare and remember only Romeo and Juliet, knowing the tragedy of their death, we are reminded that love can propel us to happiness or to tragic death. The Latin origin of the word adolescence calls attention to the nature of the age. Related not only to the verb meaning to grow up, adolescence is related to the verb meaning to burn. Adolescence is the age of burning. It is the age when the fire of our emotions is explored more than controlled. It may be worth noting the word adult is derived from the past participle of the same verb. If adolescence is burning, then adulthood is burnt up, which is, of course, a frequent charge of adolescents against their elders. Adolescent emotions are almost beyond control, which I suppose is why parents and teenagers experience so much conflict. The best the adult world can do for adolescents is provide reasonably safe places where adolescent flames can burn and where, having been experienced, the flames can be better understood and controlled. Etymology may not prove anything, but the etymology of the word adolescence does serve to remind us of some of the qualities of the age which do relate to the development of a mature writer. I believe from the fire of adolescence, Shakespeare's lover reminds us to consider the passions in writing. A more specific definition of passion will help explain the role of the emotions or passions in writing. The passions are traditionally defined as a movement in the senses caused by the imaginative awareness of something good or evil. During the age of childhood, we learned the names of things, which is the beginning of knowledge. However, naming a subject does not fully express our relation to the subject. One cannot love what one does not know, yet one seldom comes to know well what one does not love. Cold information seldom moves a student to pursue knowledge. Neither does it encourage an audience to accept the thesis of a composition. With the awakening of the passions or emotions, we begin to explore our relation to others and the world around us. We begin to place our experiences in significant contexts. Having learned about a subject, we are naturally led to consider our relation to it. Do we pursue it as a good or avoid it as something bad? Will its possession leave us in happiness or sorrow? In formal discussions, there are 4 cardinal passions around which the lesser passions revolve. Those objects perceived as good, we pursue with the emotion of hope. Those imagined as bad, we avoid with the emotion of fear. When we must accept something bad, we experience the emotion of sadness. Possessing the good, we discover the emotion of joy. Of course, we experience the world as being more or less good, and some things are imagined as having both good and bad aspects, so that we may find our passions in conflict even with themselves. We may feel drawn towards something that also in some way repels us. Good writers must be sensitive to the complex role the passions play in their own approach to a subject, as well as in the audience's response to their composition. The passions may shape the reader's response to a piece of writing as much as reason. Childhood suggests the importance of details and discipline for good writing. By reminding us of the passions, the age of adolescence may be used to suggest several more lessons. First of all, the lessons of adolescence teach us that good writers must control their passions. Good writers do more than just present information. As all students know, information can be deadly dull. Passions bring information alive, but undisciplined passion can sound like the often silly sentimentality of moonstruck lovers, or worse, like raving nonsense. Just as lovers may become sentimental or silly in their enthusiasm, so may writers. While appealing to the passions of the audience, writers must maintain control of their passions. The more emotional writers feel about their subject, the more they must guard against their wild claims they cannot support, and language that may offend the audience's sensibilities. Just as Aristotle says of young men, adolescent lovers tend to be shifting and unsteady in their desires. With good reason, one must be cautious in believing wild adolescent promises of eternal love. Passion must be controlled in writing, or it may leave the statement disorderly and unsteady. Often the loss of control appears most quickly in the tone of the composition. Specifically, the tone of an essay must be appropriate to the purpose. Exaggerated claims or false modesty, pretentious language or jargon, false familiarity or inappropriate formality, carelessly chosen words create false impressions of the writer and of the writer's subject, and encourages readers to question the reliability of both, that is, both the writer and the composition. Good writers must also choose language and details that will appeal to the emotions of their audience. Lovers are enthusiastic in their efforts to attract the attention of their beloved. However, if their actions become too exaggerated, they soon appear ridiculous to the general eye, like politicians who will kiss anything for a vote. Lovers choose their clothes, their language, all their actions with care. In a similar way, good writers support their ideas by anticipating and answering the questions their audience is likely to have, and by choosing language that is appropriate to the subject as well as to the audience. An audience is suspicious of those who attempt to win approval by offering extravagant images but no substance. Writers appeal to the emotions of their audience by selecting appropriate language and by using information to express a position of real value to the readers. Good writers also develop and organize their information to appeal to the passions of the audience. Just as in life, first words and impressions are important. So are parting words. First impressions created in the introduction and final words offered in the conclusion may well determine the audience's response to a piece of writing and whether they will accept the argument presented in the body of the composition. Of course, the development and organization of the body may also cause the audience to reject the thesis. Some people who are at first appealing may soon be found wanting as we observe their actions. After first dates and affectionate beginnings, lovers eventually examine the substance and cause of their passions. Every lover has been asked, "Why do you love me?" If the why of that question does not receive a reasonable answer with reasonable development and support, there may be problems. Love is perfected by knowledge. So are the passions generally. The body of an essay must support the thesis, providing enough information to justify the audience's emotions. A display of strong emotion in language, like a display of tears in life, may hold an audience's attention, but unless the reason for the emotion or the fears is demonstrated, the effect is usually short-lived. readers cannot respond confidently if the content of an essay is undeveloped, unclear, or poorly organized. Since the ancient Greeks began consciously studying the art of rhetoric, which would include what we call composition, the importance of the passions has been a major topic. Whenever we try to influence others, we appeal to our audience's emotions. Children put on cute or sad faces to con their grandparents. Adolescents use language that their peers will find acceptable. Adults dress for success and strive to make a positive impression. Intelligent and successful writers do the same things, only they do it with language. Writers adopt a certain tone. They select words and examples the audience will find acceptable. And finally, they organize and present their writing in the fashion that will most likely impress their reader. As you write your second essay, I will focus on how you can control your passions and emotions to make your writing more effective. When you write any document, you must be sensitive to your own as well as to your audience's feelings or passions, just as the lover may offer a rose to his or her beloved. In this lesson, we will also examine the ideas of cause and effect as additional patterns for organizing our thoughts. In our first day on childhood, we studied comparison and contrast as patterns for developing thoughts. You should remember that these patterns of development seldom appear in isolation. A simple or a single essay may use comparison and contrast and at the same time include causes and effects. We are discussing these patterns of development one at a time in this course only because it's hard to cover everything at once. As we discuss the qualities of different ages and examine different patterns for developing essays, you should remember that writing is always a process which makes use of everything the writer knows. Writing is seldom easy, but the more knowledge you bring to the task, the more skillful you can be in executing the task and in judging your success. What is the assignment for this unit? The traditional view of adolescence suggests that during adolescence we fall in love with a person or a profession, with something we will spend the next age defending. More specifically, since our adolescent experiences are often formative, shaping the directions we take in life, I have chosen the following assignment for your second essay. What I will ask you to do is examine the causes and/or effects of an adolescent experience. You may write about an experience from your adolescence or an experience you believe to be common to all adolescents. Consider adolescence to include the years from 14 to around 21. You will need to identify the adolescent experience, and you will need to examine carefully the causes or the effects of that experience. In completing this assignment, you should use the same writing process you used in composing the first assignment: inventing, organizing, and drafting, critiquing and revising, and finally editing. You should remember again, these elements are recursive and often overlap. In other words, you may discover new ideas while you are drafting the essay. The inventing goes on even as you write. Likewise, you may begin to see patterns for organizing the essay as you explore the topic. And of course, you may begin critiquing your essay even before you have really finished the first draft. Editing is the only step in the process I would try to avoid until the end. I've sometimes wasted valuable time trying to spell a particular word or punctuate an unusual sentence that I ended up not even using. I believe you can save time if you do most of your serious editing when you are finally ready to submit your composition to its audience. To begin your second essay, you need to explore the possibilities of the assignment and gather information. For the essay on childhood, I described a clustering technique. The same technique can be used for this essay. But first remember that the technique is not so important as the purpose. I would encourage you to consider several topics or several ways of completing an assignment before you select a particular thesis and gather the information needed to support that thesis. Of course, every assignment makes certain demands on a writer. Remember, this assignment requires that first you explore causes and effects of an adolescent experience, and that you represent or that you present your essay in a way that appeals to your audience's emotions. To address these demands, your invention needs to help you select an adolescent experience, not necessarily your own, though it could be, and to examine the causes and effects of that goal or of that experience. During the invention stage, you should also consider your audience and how you might appeal to that audience's feelings. You need to consider how you can involve them in your essay so they will actually want to read the paper and will sympathize with your thesis. To begin your invention stage, you might first list adolescent experiences, both your own and those that you would consider typical of adolescence. After selecting a topic from that list, you could list causes and effects of that experience. And with that information, organizing an essay should be fairly easy. Begin by listing adolescent experiences. Remember, this includes the ages from about 14 to 21. This would include your junior or middle school years and senior high school experiences through graduation from college, if pursued straight through. It would be worthwhile to consider goals to each of these three segments of time. Your listing might look something like this. A list of adolescent experiences from junior high or the middle school years might include your experience with sports, participating and trying to win a race against some rival, perhaps making the honor roll or just passing 8th grade English, attempts at being popular, or maybe just being accepted. From senior high experiences, you might recall the very first car that you tried to purchase, or a particular act of rebellion. Getting a job might be a memory that you have. Important experiences in your first years out of high school might also include volunteer work, moving out of the house to be free. College and the years immediately following represent the end of adolescence and the beginning of young adulthood, the age of Shakespeare's soldier. College experiences might remind you of selecting a college, the selection of a major field of study, or the search for a real job, perhaps experiencing failure in college or at work. Obviously, these lists are superficial. Your own list is likely to identify many more specific experiences, especially if you include any personal ones. Of course, having considered various experiences, you need to select one and examine its causes and effects. Here it is necessary to pause and consider the nature of causes and effects. Exploring the causes and effects of any topic and organizing the essay will be easier if those terms are clearly understood. As you examine any topic, you can ask how it came to be what it is. You can also ask what its effects have been or will be. Understanding causes and effects is important. In life, by failing to understand the causes of a problem, you may spend a lot of energy trying to solve it and accomplish nothing. Likewise, if you pay no attention to the effects of your actions, you may cause problems that could well be avoided. When I taught high school, I had a boy in class who was determined to impress the girls. He came to school doused with strong colognes and wearing the latest fashions. Unfortunately, the girl he loved most was allergic to his cologne. She began sneezing and asked to be moved to a new desk as far away from the boy as possible. I don't think he ever figured out why the girl didn't seem to like him. This silly example may serve to illustrate several distinctions useful in considering causes. There are 4 kinds of causes commonly defined. First, you should distinguish between immediate and remote causes. Immediate causes are those which precipitate or lead directly to an effect. The high school boy's strong cologne precipitated or led directly to the girl sneezing and asking to be moved away. Remote causes are those which may be connected to the effect, but which cannot be directly linked to a particular effect. Let us assume the girl disliked the boy for a variety of reasons. Maybe he threw food in the cafeteria or used loud, vulgar language, or, given that this was high school, his best friend may have offended her best friend. These would be remote causes for the girl's not liking the boy and her asking to be moved. She may have asked to move because of the cologne, the immediate cause, But the other causes, the remote causes, also contributed to her behavior. Again, another way of examining causes is in terms of their being necessary or sufficient. You can also identify necessary and sufficient causes in the above situation. Necessary causes are those without which an effect could not occur. For the girl to have an allergic reaction prompting her to be moved, something to which she was allergic had to be near. Sufficient causes are those which could produce a particular effect, but which may or may not have actually contributed. The boy's manners, or even the appearance of his car, may have been sufficient for the girl to dislike him and her wanting to be moved. Many causes could be sufficient to cause the girl's disapproval of the boy. In addition to the four sorts of causes just identified, you should understand that there are both immediate and delayed effects. The immediate effect of the strong cologne may have been the girl's allergic reaction. The delayed effects are effects which may not surface for some time. Perhaps after the girl with the allergic reaction moves away, a new girl who loves strong cologne will ask to sit next to the boy, and the new couple will live happily ever after. Finally, in examining causes and effects, it is helpful to remember that often causes and effects occur in relation to each other as causal chains. In a causal chain, a cause results in an effect, which then becomes a cause. For example, using my students one more time, you can imagine the following causal chain. In the first cause, the boy wears strong cologne. The effect is that the girl has an allergic reaction. The next cause, girl number one moves due to her allergic reaction, and the effect is a seat is left empty. That becomes a cause, and the seat is reassigned to girl number two, and the effect might be that the new girl likes the boy. And note how in this example, each effect becomes a cause. There are two important things to remember about causal chains. First, you need to determine how far to carry them. Had not some ancestor come to the United States, I would not be here. But to blame some long-dead ancestor for my problems in today's world may be of little practical value. Second, you need to remember that one event may not be a cause of another just because it happens before that subject of concern. Having briefly defined causes and effects, you need to return to your essay. This discussion of causes and effects can help you in a couple of ways. Remembering the different sorts of causes should encourage you to explore the causes you chose in your topic more fully. Organizing your essay may also be easier if you keep the above definitions in mind. I will use a student essay to illustrate how you can proceed with this assignment. A student from a previous semester wrote her essay on the causes and effects of her leaving home. She began her essay using the clustering invention technique that we used on the first essay. However, she modified the exercise a little to help with this assignment. First, she identified the experience she was going to write about, leaving or wanting to leave home after high school graduation. She wrote that in the center of her paper. Next, she thought about immediate and remote causes, and then about sufficient and necessary causes. She discovered that some of the remote causes were also sufficient causes for leaving home. However, for the purpose of composing the essay, the most important point of her clustering activity is that the student discovered a number of causes for her wanting to leave home. She then repeated the clustering activity by examining both the immediate and the delayed effects of her experience. Examining the student's invention activities in your course materials, I believe you can see a number of ideas she could use in organizing and drafting her essay. Just as childhood reminded you to approach the subject of your writing with a sense of wonder, the age of the lover should remind you to establish a clear relation to the subject. In the next lessons in this unit, I will consider how the information from the invention stage and your study of causes and effects can be organized, and how you can appeal to the emotions of your audience. I will also examine how our Composition 2 student used the information she gathered during the invention stage to complete the second essay assignment. Adolescence is an age of passions, and the challenge of adolescence is in part learning how to control the passions. To ignore them would be unhealthy, even inhuman. On the other hand, to allow the passions to wholly dominate life would be equally wrong. A life which substitutes feeling for knowledge, at the very least, is guilty of sentimentality. The important point of love is the beloved, and not the Valentine cards sent and received. Yet if the passions are not addressed, the beloved may feel forgotten and leave. If we neglect our passions, we may neglect our love and lose the joy we experienced in its possession.